I lied about my mom being sick so I could see my high school lover, and it backfired badly. Help, help, help. Guys, this is so urgent. I need help ASAP. I think I just messed up my life, permanently. A few days ago, my husband and the love of my life, Colin, left my life. Like stood up and left, packed some of his stuff, and I haven't seen him since. I miss him, and I need to get him back into my life. I need advice, but I know that I need to tell the story of how I got here in the first place. My name is Lily, 30, female, and my husband's name is Colin, 32, male. We haven't been married long. Just 2 years, but they have been the best 2 years of my life. Colin made me so happy. He was a good man and a good husband. We were talking about kids just before this happened. We dated for 2 years before we got married. We met on a dating app, Tinder. It was fate. He was the first profile I saw when I got the app. His pictures consisted of 3 of them with his dog, 1 of them with his buddies, and a few of them with him on vacation. Back then, he had a mustache and a goatee, his longish blonde hair in a ponytail. He has long ditched the ponytail, but the mustache and goatee have stayed. I thought he was handsome then. I still think he's handsome now. My parents used to joke that once you married someone, they were never as attractive as they once were. I always thought they were full of it. They were very unhappy in their marriage. What did they know? The more I've grown up, the more I know that they were full of it. I was very attracted to Colin. I was even more attracted to him when I got married to him. I messaged Colin first, and he replied an entire day later. I just thought he was rude. Who leaves someone on delivered for an entire 24 hours? But when he finally replied, it was worth it. He was funny, charming in this slightly awkward way that felt real, and he had this way of turning small talk into something meaningful. We talked for a few days before meeting up for coffee. It was at this little cafe near my apartment that I always passed but never went into. He picked it because he said it looked like the kind of place you'd like, which already made me smile. He showed up early and was waiting outside with a small bouquet of daisies. I remember because I thought it was weird that he got me daisies. Most guys would just get some roses because it's the most romantic flower they could think of. Most guys didn't even care if the girl they were giving the flowers to liked roses. So yeah, daisies were a little unconventional, but it showed that he wasn't like the other guys. When he gave them to me, he said they reminded him of sunshine, and he thought I looked like the kind of person who liked sunshine. I remember thinking that no one had ever said anything like that to me before. I wanted to kiss him right there, in front of all those people, in front of the cafe while cars passed us by. That first date went by in a blur. We talked for hours, laughing so hard that at one point the barista actually told us to zip it. When we walked outside, it had started to rain lightly, and instead of running for cover, Colin offered me his jacket and used it to cover up my hair. He got absolutely soaked. I should have thought it was cheesy, but it didn't feel cheesy. It felt like something out of a movie. After that, he didn't play games. He called when he said he would. He planned dates that actually meant something. When he slept over, he'd leave little notes in my bag. He'd always text me good morning and good night every single day, and when we started getting serious, he'd write me letters. Not long ones, just small notes about random things. He hated his phone and he hated texting. So instead, he'd write about how he loved the way I scrunched my nose when I laughed, or how he couldn't wait to see me again. He made me feel like I was living in one long love letter. Corny, I know. After just 3 months of dating, I took him back to South Carolina to meet my parents. I was so nervous. My parents had never approved of any of my boyfriends. Some of my boyfriends, they even hated. I was scared that even Colin's natural charm wouldn't win them over. I should have known never to doubt him. When he met them, he brought flowers for my mom and fixed the broken latch on their front gate before he even came inside. My dad liked him immediately. They didn't want him to leave. My friends from back home adored him too. It was like everyone could see what I saw. A year later, Colin proposed. I wasn't expecting it. He'd been planning it for months. He booked a dinner reservation at our favorite restaurant. He hired a professional photographer to capture the moment. He asked for my dad's permission over a FaceTime call. Yes, he's old-fashioned like that. He even hid the ring in one of his socks for weeks. The proposal was exactly what you'd expect from him. It was thoughtful and romantic. I couldn't stop crying. It felt like my life was coming together. I mean, a year ago, I had no idea Colin even existed. And now, he was in the restaurant pushing a ring box towards me. As if the proposal wasn't exciting enough, Colin booked us a trip immediately after. It was Labor Day weekend, so it was the perfect opportunity. We went on a weekend trip to Colorado, staying in this cozy cabin by a lake. He'd spent the entire day being super romantic. He told me I was his favorite person in the entire world, that he didn't believe in soulmates until he met me, and that he wanted to love me every day for the rest of his life. If he hadn't proposed already, I would have thought he was proposing again. Not that I'd have minded. Planning the wedding took an entire year. We both wanted a big wedding, and we got it. But planning it was hell. Wedding planning was actually what caused us our biggest fight till date. It ended with Colin sleeping on the couch. It was a stressful time for both of us. The wedding drained so much from us, time, money, and energy, but it was worth it. Our wedding was the wedding of our dreams. Our entire extended families were able to fly out to make it. It was beautiful and full of laughter. Colin cried when he saw me walk down the aisle, and honestly, that image is burned into my memory forever. For 2 years, I got to be loved by someone who didn't just say he loved me, he showed it every single day. This feels like the best time to address the elephant in the room. My high school boyfriend, Evan. Evan and I dated all through high school. He was my first love, my first everything. He played guitar in this awful little band. Seriously, they were awful. They were a grunge band in 2011. Can you imagine? He drove an old blue pickup that smelled like motor oil and fast food. He somehow made me feel like we were the only real people in the world. We were young and stupid. We talked about running away after graduation, getting a tiny apartment somewhere. It didn't happen, of course. What did happen was that he broke up with me the week before prom. He came over to my house. My parents weren't home, so I thought we'd spend the night making out on the couch and playing house. Instead, he refused to step into the house and told me we were over on my parents' porch. He said he needed to figure himself out before dragging me down with him. Then he just turned around and left. I was heartbroken. I cried for weeks, convinced I'd never get over him. I didn't even go for prom. My parents were great. They allowed me to cry in their arms like a little girl, but I could tell that they were both secretly glad and relieved. They never liked Evan. My mom tried to be nice at least. Dad didn't. He didn't hide the fact that he couldn't stand Evan. He called him a burnout. He said he'd never amount to something. Eventually, I did get over Evan. Life moved on. College, work, dating, and eventually Colin. I was happy. I was so happy. Everything was so good. At least everything was good until a few weeks ago. I was scrolling through Instagram late one night. Colin was fast asleep. He knocks out around 9 these days. I was half asleep and about to go to bed too, when I saw a familiar name pop up in the People You May Know section. It was Evan. My heart actually skipped. I hadn't seen that name in years. I don't even know what made me click on his profile, but I did. His picture was just him sitting on a porch with a beer in his hand, smiling that same crooked smile I remembered. He looked older, sure, but still like him. He was still him. For a few minutes, I just stared at his pictures, going through his posts like some kind of creep. I was so scared that I was going to accidentally like one of his older posts. By some miracle, I didn't. God, that would have been embarrassing. His oldest posts are from 2014, about a year after we broke up, so I don't feature on his page at all. That made me a little sad. To anyone who came into his life that didn't know him in high school, there will be no indication that he loved a girl named Lily. He didn't have a ring on his finger, no wife in the photos, a few shots of a dog, some hiking trips, a couple of old friends I recognized, new friends I didn't. Then I saw a post from last summer with the caption, "Still chasing sunsets." I almost cried. Let me explain. Sunsets were kind of our thing in high school. We used to drive out past the edge of town and sit on the hood of his car, watching the sky change colors until it got dark. I don't know why, but seeing that made something twist inside me. He was still chasing sunsets. Was he thinking of me when he did that? So much time had passed between me and Evan, but that night, staring at Evan's profile, it was like no time had passed at all. I could remember everything. The sound of his laugh, the way he used to tuck my hair behind my ear, the way he'd beg me to stay a little longer when I had to go home. I didn't message him, not then. I just closed the app and told myself it was nothing, just curiosity. But over the next few days, I kept thinking about him. It was like opening an old door I thought was shut forever. Before, I only thought of Colin when I thought of high school, which was practically never. Now, I thought of him all the time. I was in line at the grocery store, and I could have sworn I saw his hair. I was at the gas station, and I thought of him when I saw the candy he liked. I was in bed with Colin, and I thought he sounded like Evan when he said my name. I had never thought that before. It was driving me insane. I kept seeing him in places where I knew he wasn't. I kept hearing his voice. A few days after finding his profile, I finally broke. I was sitting on the couch, Colin in the kitchen making dinner, and I don't know what came over me. I opened Instagram again, found Evan's page, and before I could think too hard about it, I sent a message. Just one line. "Wow, it's been forever. Hope you're doing well." The second I hit send, my stomach dropped. I thought about unsending it, but it was too late. He saw it almost immediately. The little typing bubble popped up, and I swear my heart was pounding so loud I was sure Colin could hear it. Evan replied, "Lily? Wow, I can't believe it's really you. You just made my night." That was all it took. One message turned into a conversation that went on for hours. We talked about everything, our jobs, our families, what we'd been up to all these years. He told me he'd moved around a lot, that he'd tried music for a while before settling into something more stable. He said he'd never gotten married, that it just never felt right with anyone. I didn't tell him how much that line stuck in my head. I kept texting him through dinner. Colin asked who it was. I saw no need to lie, so I told him it was an old friend from high school. Colin just shrugged and said cool. He didn't think anything about it. He was very secure in our relationship, and he trusted me completely. At first, it was just two old friends catching up, but there was this undercurrent between us, this familiarity that came rushing back way too easily. He remembered everything, the way I used to doodle on his hand with a pen, the sweater I wore the first time we kissed, the stupid inside jokes no one else would understand. He'd say something very casually about growing up with me, and suddenly I'd be 17 again. Colin and I didn't have that. I met Colin when I was 26. He was 28. We were full-blown adults when we fell in love. We didn't have any more growing up to do. Being in love when you're 16 and being in love when you're 26 are totally different feelings. Evan and I started messaging every day after that night, morning, afternoon, late at night. It got to the point where I'd wake up and check my phone before even saying good morning to Colin. Even though I told myself it was innocent, that we were just reconnecting, I knew better. I could feel myself slipping into an emotional affair. Evan was charming, just like he used to be. He'd send me songs that reminded him of us, even though there was no us. He'd tell me about how lonely he'd been lately, how talking to me again, even just online, made him feel alive. He said he couldn't believe how beautiful I still was, how my smile hadn't changed at all. I should have stopped him, should have drawn a line. Instead, I let it happen, because it felt really good. Colin noticed something was off, of course. He always does. He asked one night why I was smiling at my phone, and I blew up at him and called him controlling. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't stop. The more I talked to Evan, the more I wanted to see him. I told him about my marriage, about how happy I was, but how sometimes it felt like because I didn't grow up with Colin, it felt like he didn't fully understand me and that I feared he never would. He told me he knew exactly what I meant, that he missed the excitement of being in love with me. I told him I didn't miss that, but the truth was, I did. I missed being in love with him. Our messages started to shift. He began calling me Lils again. He'd say things like, "I still can't believe I let you go," or "I wonder what would have happened if we'd stayed together." I should have ignored it, but instead I wrote back things like, "We were just kids, it never would have worked." He didn't back down. He said he was stupid and that we would have made it work. He sounded so convinced that I started to believe that maybe we would have worked out. It wasn't long before we started talking on the phone. The first time, it was supposed to be a quick call, but we ended up talking for 2 hours. His voice hadn't changed. It was deep and warm and familiar in a way that made my chest ache. He told me I sounded exactly the same. I told him he did too. He laughed. I had missed his laugh. I had missed him. Over the next few weeks, the conversations got deeper. We talked about the things we regretted, the choices we'd made, the lives we'd built. He told me he'd never stopped wondering about me, that I was always the one who got away. I told him not to say that. He said it anyway. He told me he dreamed about me sometimes, that he'd wake up wishing he could see me. I didn't know what to say. So I said I thought about him too. It wasn't physical, but it felt just as heavy. It was very intimate and consuming. I'd find myself checking my phone constantly, rereading our messages, waiting for his name to pop up on my screen. I started pulling away from Colin without even realizing it. I'd go to bed later so I could talk to Evan. I'd get this rush every time my phone buzzed, like a teenager again. It was pathetic, and I hated how much I loved it. Colin confronted me about it one night after dinner. He was quiet all through the meal, barely said a word. I could tell something was bothering him, but I didn't want to ask. All I was looking forward to was getting into bed and texting Evan, or calling him. Plus, I assumed it was just something with work. That tended to bum him out. When I started clearing the dishes, he finally spoke. "Are you having an affair?" I froze. The words hit me like a slap. I turned to him, plate still in my hand, and just stared. I couldn't even process what he'd said at first. He didn't yell or accuse me of anything. He just looked tired and defeated. "You've been on your phone all the time lately. You barely talk to me. You go to bed after me. You don't even look at me the same way anymore." I rushed to tell him no, of course not, that I'd never cheat on him. I meant it, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew it wasn't completely true. Maybe I hadn't touched Evan, but I was already halfway gone. I know what an emotional affair entails. Colin studied my face for a long time, then he nodded slowly and said, "Okay." He just went to bed like he hadn't just turned my life upside down. I stood there in the kitchen for a long time after he went to bed. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I kept replaying his voice in my head. "Are you having an affair?" That night, I deleted all my messages with Evan. Every single one. I told myself it was over, that I needed to focus on my marriage. But the next morning, the silence was unbearable. Colin barely spoke to me. He kissed me on the forehead before leaving for work, but it felt mechanical. I wanted to cry. My sweet romantic husband was pulling away because he didn't fully trust me anymore. At that moment, I really needed comfort. I didn't want to text my parents or any of my friends. I knew exactly who I wanted to text, and I hated myself for it. Still, I opened Instagram and texted Evan. We talked for a few hours. I didn't tell him the entire thing, just that I was feeling pretty bummed out. He cheered me up. In minutes, I had forgotten what even made me sad in the first place. That's when he dropped the bomb on me. He was going back to our town in South Carolina. He said he was going back for a few days to help his sister with some stuff at their parents' old place. He paused after he said it like he was waiting for me to say something. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might actually be sick. I told him I hoped he had a nice trip, that it'd be weird to be back after so long. Then he said, "It'd be less weird if I saw you." My whole body went warm. It's like I'd been subconsciously waiting for an invitation, like I was just itching at the opportunity, for him to extend the branch, for him to make contact. Now that he did, I didn't feel guilty about what I was about to do. In fact, the next part was very easy. I told him that my mom hadn't been feeling well lately, that I'd been planning to visit her soon anyway. That was a lie. My mom was perfectly fine, healthier than me probably, but the words came out so easily it scared me. I told him maybe our trips would overlap. Maybe we could grab coffee just to catch up. He said he'd love that. The lie spun out faster than I could catch it. I told Colin that Mom wasn't doing great and that I wanted to go visit her for a few days. He was immediately concerned and offered to come with me, but I told him it was fine. I used the excuse that I just wanted some time with her. He hugged me, told me to send her his love, and even helped me pack. Watching him fold my clothes while I lied straight to his face made my stomach twist, but I still went through with it. The desire to see Evan was so strong. It was like I wasn't fully in control of my actions. I drove down that Friday, hands shaking on the steering wheel the whole way. The second I crossed into South Carolina, I almost turned around. I told myself I'd just see Evan for a quick coffee and we'd just talk. I even tried to tell myself that I was doing this to get closure. As if. Before this month, I hadn't thought of Evan for longer than 3 seconds. I now know that I was trying to find whatever excuse to make me feel less horrible. When I pulled into town, he was already waiting for me outside this little diner we used to go to in high school. And just like that, all the years between us disappeared. He smiled that same smile, and before I knew it, we were hugging. It wasn't romantic. But when he pulled away, he didn't really let go. And I didn't either. We sat in that diner for hours. We talked, laughed, reminisced. He told me about his job, his travels, how he never thought he'd be back here again. Then he looked at me and said, "But I guess I had a reason to come back after all." My heart sank and fluttered all at once. How did I manage to get two of the most romantic men in the world to date me? After dinner, he asked if I wanted to drive out to the old spot. The old spot is the hill where we used to watch the sunsets. I nodded before he even finished the question. We drove out to the hill in his old blue truck. Before you ask, no, not the same one from high school. Actually, thinking of it now, it was close enough. The moment I climbed in, the smell hit me. Motor oil and fast food. It was like stepping straight into my teenage years. I didn't realize how much I'd missed that smell until that moment. It made my chest ache. Tears filled my eyes. I don't even know why. I wasn't in love with Evan. I haven't been in love with Evan for a long time. Then why was he having such a big effect on me? It wasn't fair. It was a beautiful day. The sun hung low in the sky. The sky looked so pretty, all gold and pink. Evan kept glancing at me. I could feel his eyes on me. It felt magnetic, like a quiet pull. I fought to just keep my eyes on the road in front of me, because I knew that if I turned to look at him, at those beautiful green eyes, that I would kiss him right there while he was driving. And God knows the last thing I needed was a crash. But it was so hard. The hum of the engine, the warmth of the car, the way his presence pressed close to mine, it all made it impossible to think straight. When we stopped at the hill, we sat on the hood. The air suddenly became thick and still around us. I could feel his eye on me again. When I turned to look at him, his eyes met mine. He leaned closer. His hand brushed mine, and the world shifted. My heart slammed against my ribs. We were kissing before I knew it. The kiss was slow and tentative at first. I could tell that Evan was shy, testing the waters. It had been so long since we'd done this. We were learning each other all over again. His lips were warm and familiar. I felt the kiss in every nerve, every memory of what we had been. It wasn't desire so much as an ache. I kissed him back until the weight of what I was doing crashed into me. Shame washed over me. My body went cold, and I stumbled back from him. "Sorry, Evan, I can't." Evan, sweet man that he is, nodded. "Your husband." I could tell that he was disappointed, that he wanted to say something, but he didn't. We drove back in silence. I had him drop me off at a motel just outside town. I didn't want anyone to see me. I didn't want any evidence that I was ever back home. I checked my phone for the first time in hours and saw that I had a couple of texts from Colin. I just felt even more guilty. I cried myself to sleep that night. My heart was torn. I obviously still felt something for Evan since I kissed him, but I was a married woman. Married women don't kiss their high school boyfriends. I made up my mind to drive back to Colin the next day and just fully commit to him. I would block Evan on Insta and delete his number off my phone. Colin would never know what his wife had done. If only I knew then what the next day would bring. I woke up around 8 in that awful motel room feeling gross and confused. My head was pounding, my stomach hurt, and the second I opened my eyes, I remembered everything from the lie to the drive to the kiss. Oh my God, the kiss. I wanted to crawl out of my own skin. My phone was on the nightstand, blowing up with notifications. Most were from Colin, but there was one from my mom that made my blood run cold. It said, "Why did you tell Colin I was sick?" My whole body just froze. I sat there staring at that text for a solid minute, completely blank. Then I called her. She picked up on the second ring, and I could tell right away she was confused. I tried to sound calm, but my voice was shaking. I started rambling, saying I was sorry, that I didn't know why I said it, that I just wanted a few days to clear my head. I told her I didn't want Colin to worry, that it wasn't supposed to blow up like this. And then, because I'm apparently incapable of shutting up when I should, I admitted it. I told her everything. The lie, Evan, the kiss, all of it. It just came rushing out. I've always had a great relationship with my mom. In a lot of ways, she's my best friend. I used to tell her everything, so I didn't hesitate to tell her now. I wasn't scared of her judging me. She never would. She didn't say a word for a long time. I just kept talking into the silence, crying and apologizing like it would fix anything. Then she finally spoke, and her voice was completely flat. "Lily, he's here." I didn't understand at first, so she said it again. Colin was at their house. He had driven down that morning to surprise me and check on Mom. I was on speakerphone. He had heard everything. My chest felt like it caved in. I couldn't breathe. My mom said he looked heartbroken, that he was just sitting in the living room with his head in his hands waiting for me. I don't even remember hanging up. I just grabbed my keys and ran. I didn't pack, didn't even check out of the motel. I got in my car and started driving as fast as I could. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the wheel. That drive felt endless. Every second was like my heart was being squeezed tighter. I just kept playing how it probably went down in my head. First, Colin walking into my parents' house. Second, him realizing I'd lied, probably thinking my mom was dying while I was out doing this. Third, the phone call. When I got to my parents' house, I caught Colin as he stormed out of my parents' house. I barely put my car in park before I ran up to him. I grabbed him by the arm to get him to look at me, but he just pulled his arm out of my grasp. He didn't say a single word to me. He just walked right past me. I tried to follow him, to get him to stop, but he got in his car and slammed the door before I could even speak. Then he drove off. I stood there in the driveway watching him disappear down the road until I couldn't see the taillights anymore. When I finally went inside, my parents were waiting. My mom looked disappointed in a way I've never seen before, and my dad, he couldn't even look at me. I tried to explain, to tell them I'd just made a stupid mistake, that it wasn't as bad as it sounded, but the more I talked, the worse it sounded. My dad told me I'd broken something that couldn't be fixed, and that Colin didn't deserve what I'd done. My mom kept saying she couldn't believe it, that I'd always been the good kid. I sat there crying like a teenager who'd gotten caught sneaking out, except this time it wasn't something small. I had destroyed my marriage. After a few hours of sitting on the couch, receiving a lecture, I told them I had to go. My mom offered for me to stay the night, but I couldn't. I just wanted to get home and fix it somehow. I drove back, crying the entire way. I kept thinking Colin would be there when I got home, that he'd want to talk or yell or something. Anything I could work with. But when I pulled into the driveway, his car wasn't there. The house was quiet. I went inside and everything looked normal at first. Then I saw my laptop open on the dinner table. My email was open. I had a new email waiting for me. Just 2 hours old. Divorce papers. He must have gotten his lawyer to draft them while I was getting a lecture back home. I sat on the floor for hours, just staring at them. I called him over and over again, but he never picked up. Texted him, emailed him, nothing. Eventually his number stopped ringing altogether, which means he blocked me. I thought maybe Evan would be there for me. Not romantically, because I kind of shut that door, but at least as a friend. I reached out to him that night. He replied hours later, saying he was sorry things blew up, and that maybe this was a sign he should focus on his music again. 2 days later, he posted a picture from the airport on Instagram with the caption, "California, here I come." Dad was right. He was a burnout. Now it's just me, sitting in this house, completely alone. I can't eat, I can't sleep, and every time I close my eyes, I see Colin's face. That's why I'm on here asking for some advice. How do I come back from this? Can I come back from this? Update, 6 weeks later. It's been about 6 weeks since I made that post. I guess it's time for an update. Colin went through with the divorce. Everything was handled through lawyers. I saw him only a couple of times. He didn't even come to pick up his things himself. His brother came instead. That hurt more than I expected. When he left, the house didn't even feel like mine anymore. It just felt empty. A few days later, I got word that Colin accepted a big promotion out of state. He moved to Seattle. A friend sent me a photo of him at some company event. He looked good. He's always been handsome, but there was something different this time. He's even growing his hair out again. He doesn't look like a man who misses me. Meanwhile, I'm barely getting by. I had to move back in with my parents because I couldn't afford rent on my own. That alone was humiliating enough, but living under the same roof as the people who watched me blow up my own marriage is its own kind of punishment. My mom tries to be gentle, but I can tell she's disappointed every time she looks at me. My dad doesn't even bother pretending. We mostly communicate through my mom now. I've been out of work for a few weeks. I called in sick too many times while everything was falling apart, and they eventually stopped scheduling me. I spend most days in my old room, scrolling through pictures of me and Colin or rereading our old text. A few of you asked about Evan. Well, he's gone. He's apparently playing music again, going to open mics and trying to get a record deal. I can't even be mad at him. He never promised me anything. But I am aware that the person I risked everything for disappeared almost immediately. Meanwhile, the person who stood by me for years is gone for good. I see people online talking about the one that got away. I used to think that was Evan. I know now that it was Colin. Thanks for all the advice, but I didn't really need it. There was no changing Colin's mind. I think I'm going to take a break from updating this story even if something happens. I just can't deal with the idea of telling this story again. It already hurts enough. Thanks for hearing me out, guys. Bye.